The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
It's official. Oklahoma is not dead on the recruiting trail.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners.
The Oklahoma Sooners get their guy, one of the top players on their recruiting board for 2026, Jake Kreul, the five-star prospect by ESPN, committing to Oklahoma on Tuesday.
Yeah, it kind of shocked the world. Actually, really didn't, because Oklahoma's been trending for Jake Kreul for a while. But the fact that it actually came to fruition, because we were also trending heavily for Davian Gross, and it did not come down for that. But if there's one position that I knew that Oklahoma was definitely going to drop the bags or whatever you want to say and show that they're not broke Oklahoma, it was going to be for an elite edge. And Jake Kreul is one that is ridiculously good. Like, whenever you talk about him just as a player, he's one of those players that you definitely want to get your hands on, especially because for Oklahoma, the most important thing is you need to have elite edge play if you want to survive in the SEC. You have to have elite interior play if you want to survive in the SEC. And Jake Kreul gives you that. The dude is just a monster. His bend is stupid. His speed, his hand placement. John, the minute that I saw that Oklahoma had a chance with him, I was like, I don't care what you do. Figure it out, because we're going to need him in about a year.
He's a very well-versed pass rusher. He's not somebody that just relies on speed, just relies on power, just relies on his athleticism. He's very technically sound. And I think that's the thing that makes him so special already, is that he's very technically sound, and he's also an elite athlete. He also has good bend. He also has great hands. And he really is the total package at defensive end. And so when you get him on campus and you continue to build him up in the strength and conditioning program, you continue to develop him, the sky is really the limit for him. I mean, he wins on the outside, getting around the offensive tackles, bending around them. He's able to set up his pass rush move so well that he can beat offensive tackles to the inside, which is like a big, big no-no for offensive tackles. Do not get beat inside, because that's a direct line to the quarterback. But he just sets up his pass rush so well and so smartly that this is a guy that really has a very, very high ceiling, and somebody that could have the potential of being a top 10 NFL draft pick down the road.
Yeah, especially, and that's the other thing too, with that, Oklahoma's going to lose two players at the end of the season. R. Mason Thomas is gone. So is Marvin Jones Jr. They're both gone. There's nothing you can do about it. They are both definitely going to be out. And since they're going to be gone, you need to have somebody that's going to be there as a replacement. And Jake Kreul is the dude that could be the player that could replace them. He's one that can actually play as a potential true freshman. He's not one that you'll work on his technique and make sure that he's really good. But overall, John, the biggest plus for Oklahoma in this one is that if we're going to pay a five-star like him, you want him on the field. And he's one that's going to get on the field very early. No R. Mason Thomas, no Marvin Jones Jr. You still have Taylor Wine, Daniel Collier, PJ Adebawore, as well as Wyatt Gilmore. But besides that, it's young. It's CJ Nixon, right? It's going to be Alexander Shieldknight. So with that, in that case, Jake Kreul could find a way and find an opportunity to get on the field a lot earlier than people will expect.
So much of it's going to depend on how well does he hold up in the run game. And that's going to be the biggest challenge for any defensive lineman coming from high school to college, even playing at IMG Academy, playing against some of the best programs across the country. That's not always going to be a smooth transition, because it's just a different game. The physicality, the level of competition, the size that you're going to have to go up against week in, week out at the collegiate level. At the same time, the technique is so sound. That's the part that a lot of times players struggle with the most is, okay, that guy might be bigger than me, but if I'm still technically sound, I'm going to be able to hold up at the point of attack. I'm going to be able to set the edge, and I'm going to be able to do my job and do it well. And to me, again, this is one of those guys that you can project could potentially be in a significant role as a true freshman because he's so technically sound. Reminds you of Jaden Jackson. I know the IMG Academy thing is going to be the easiest comparison there, but Jaden Jackson was very technically sound as a high school player, played with great leverage, great pad level. There wasn't a whole lot that you had to do to fix his pad level. So much offensive linemen, defensive linemen, they want to get up really quickly out of their stance. But Jaden Jackson plays so low and plays with such great leverage. That was going to be what allowed him to step onto the field early because he wasn't going to get bullied off the point of attack. He wasn't going to get bullied in the interior against the SEC. And that came to be true. The same potential for Jake Kreul.
Yeah, there was one guy that looked at him, especially when he was looking at like some of the other schools in like Colorado or whatnot. He mentioned he's like, he could be like another Max Crosby type, just because of the way that he how fast, like I said, low he stays, his bend, and his ability to get around those edges so fast. And I could totally see it. The kid's game is best. Heck, Brian Smith over at the portal here for Locked On Podcast Network, he was talking about how as a true freshman, he thought he was the most talented dude on the field at those camps. As a true freshman, that's really hard to do, especially with the fact that he's only, 240-ish, right? He was like 220s, probably around that time, 215, 210-ish, going in as a true freshman. And he thought that he was probably the most talented dude out there as a true freshman. That's high praise, especially with all the camps that we know Brian has gone to.
Yeah, and if only you have to do is get his weight up to maybe a 250 range, like you don't need to bulk him up to 270. Like maybe you've done with the Taylor Wine, some of the defensive ends, and Ethan Downs. You let him play at 250 because he's strong enough, he's fast enough, he's quick enough that he's going to be a menace on the edge against offensive tackles. So big time win for Miguel Chavis, for Brent Venables on the recruiting trail, beating out Texas, beating out Ole Miss. And this is one of those that a week ago when we were talking about Jake Kreul, people were really worried because he moved up that commitment date.
Yeah.
And there was no set in stone commitment date. Everybody kind of presumed it was going to be October. And I think the understanding was he wanted to kind of wait and see into the season a little bit. But then when he set a commitment date, everybody got really, really worried. They panicked. They freaked out. I was like, wait a minute, let's just see what happens, because Oklahoma's developed a really good relationship with this kid and with the family. Miguel Chavis seems to have done a really great job recruiting him, that there were predictions favoring Oklahoma for Kreul months ago. And then they were able to close the deal. And I think not only does it speak to the relationship that Oklahoma's built, it speaks to the confidence that he has in Oklahoma's program this season and beyond. Faith over fear. Absolutely loved that line being put out there that it's a quote from Jake Kreul. It's this belief that Oklahoma's going to be good. I'm not going to buy into all the negative recruiting that's out there.
Yeah, and just the fact that he picked Oklahoma just like, because initially it was October was mentioned because he said he wanted to see what October looks like. So we all anticipated, Red River. That's basically the battle, because it's what it was. It was Oklahoma versus Texas. I mean, Ole Miss was a hat on the table, but for the most part, it was Oklahoma versus Texas. And so everybody was like, oh, okay, so he wants to see who wins that game. And so Oklahoma needed to go out there and win it. That's going to be critical for them in order to win his services. And then when, like I said, he moved it up, we were kind of like, this might not be a good thing. And shoot, he shocked us all. I guess Oklahoma picked up the phone and said, hey, man, you want in? It's yours. Let's go. We've got some other players we're going after. Let's make it happen. Let's do this as a team. And he trusts the relationship, and he's ready to win SEC and national championships with Oklahoma.
Let's go. I kept the faith. Let's just be real. I did too. I mean,
that's all I kept saying.
Would it have surprised me if he picked Texas? No. But it also doesn't surprise me at all that he picked Oklahoma.
I would have been a little surprised, to be honest.
Well,
Texas would have been just, it just didn't feel right.
No, it never feels right.
Never does.
But anyway, can we also, I'm so tired of watching Texas fans try to downplay a player that doesn't commit to them. Just, can we get over that one day? Can you guys just admit you lost one and it's okay? You're not going to win them all. And he's still a good player. It's okay to admit that, guys. It's fine. He's still great.
Yeah,
anyway,
it actually is okay, guys.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's just friendly competition between rivals. It's whatever.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first order.
Maryland basketball could add another 5-star commit. I do want to talk a little bit about this basketball recruiting to start, because I think there was some interesting news over the last week or so about Maryland basketball recruiting that could be really big for the Maryland Terrapins. And it sounds like you guys are all really familiar with this kid, Baba. I don't really want to try and pronounce his last name. It's a tough last name to pronounce, and I've heard it a lot of different ways after watching videos of people pronouncing it. But this kid, this 5-star prospect, Baba, who is actually was a 2027. So he's originally a 2027, the number one player in the country for the 2027 class, has all the traits that a lot of people look for in those types of players. I've heard people call him the next KD. There's a lot of different comparisons. Has reclassified up to the 2026 class. And so usually when you have a 2027, we're still kind of a couple years away from that. So I would talk about Baba, but I wasn't going to talk about him a ton. There was still just a long way to go for him until he ended up actually potentially really being a potential target for Maryland. But now that he's transitioned to a 2026, this is a really big news for Maryland basketball recruiting, because obviously, as you guys know, he's from Silver Spring, Maryland. So he's a Maryland kid. He's a DMV kid. And not every day you'll get a DMV kid that's the number one player in the nation. I don't know how many times that has actually happened. Obviously, we have a really good recruiting area in the DMV with the WCAC leading the way with teams like Gonzaga and DeMatha and St. John's for basketball, with other schools as well. And the Baltimore schools are some good basketball schools too. Like if you think about like St. Francis usually has some good players, and the IAC has some good teams. Like it's definitely a hotbed for basketball recruiting, but still, very rarely are you going to have the number one player in the nation coming from your state in town. And I think that allows Maryland to have a real opportunity to land this kid. I think Maryland's in this battle. I think there's a really good chance that the Terps are able to land Baba. I think there's a real chance that he ends up committing to Maryland in the 2026 class. And I'm telling you, the way that Buzz Williams has been recruiting, the way that he's been involved, it seems like, with recruiting. A lot of people said Kevin Willard rubbed them the wrong way during the recruiting process, that he kind of just laid back, let his assistants handle the work. But it sounds like Buzz Williams, he's the one leading it. He's the one that's going to go after people. He's the one that's going to make things happen. He's the one that's going to look for players. He's the one that's calling guys. He's the one that's identifying players. And I think you're really seeing it coming true for Maryland basketball, just based off the transfer portal last year, but also the way that recruiting has gone this year, because you can see we've been able to get outside the DMV, where I feel like the last couple of years we've been stuck kind of in that DMV threshold, which is obviously, I just said, DMV's really good recruiting, but eventually you kind of want to get outside of the DMV. And obviously Baba's from the DMV, but I'm just kind of say that Buzz Williams has taken the next step in recruiting. Like when you think about it, in our first real class under Kevin Willard, we brought in, it was Deshaun Harris-Smith, Jamie Kaiser, Jonathan Lamote. None of those guys are part of our program anymore, and they were all DMV guys, or from the DMV area. And then next class, Malachi Palmer, it depends on kind of how you look at it. He went to school in Baltimore, but I guess he was from the Pennsylvania area. So I don't know exactly how you kind of include him in that. But then obviously Derek Queen, Baltimore kid, Maryland kid, represents that well. Like, we were really focused on the DMV, and now we're seeing Buzz Williams able to go all over the place. And I think a big part of that is because he's involved in it. He's making the calls, like I said, and it's a big reason why I think we can land Baba. He's a DMV kid, so we automatically get that plus for him staying home, for him being part of the Maryland program. So we obviously get that plus and that boost to us that feels really good for the Terps. But we also have Buzz Williams, who's actively doing a really high-level job at recruiting. And so when you combine that together and you get a 5-star prospect in Baba, it's really kind of interesting what I think Maryland could do here. I think we're absolutely in this battle. I totally expect the big dogs to get involved. I'm guessing he has every offer. I haven't technically looked at all the offers he has, but a kid like this, you don't usually have to look. You usually know he usually has just about every single offer. So I think it's reasonable to think he's pretty much every offer and can go anywhere that he wants to go. But a big part of the reason why I think Maryland is actually going to end up landing him is if you look at the school he goes to right now. He goes to James Hubert Blake, which is a school. It's in Silver Spring area, Cloverly, Maryland. So I think the interesting thing about that is he's still going to a public school. He's not trying to go flashy to go to one of these big time schools. Like, a lot of those people end up going to schools like Montverde or some of these other high school programs that are known to be really good. And that tells me something that he might like being home. And I don't know, there's talks that he could actually end up leaving James Hubert Blake High School. I don't know exactly what's happening with that, so I won't dig too much into that. But I think the fact that he's here still going to school at his local public school does kind of tell you that he likes being home, because I promise you there are many opportunities. I promise you the WCAC coaches have called him and tried to get him to visit, trying to get him over there, and probably have talked to his parents. I bet you Montverde is somewhere that is trying to get him. I'm kind of blanking on some of the other high school basketball programs, but I know there's a ton. There's like those core, there's those core programs that are kind of nationally known that all play each other. So, I think that's a good sign to know. And obviously, I don't know the entire backstory behind that, but I do think that's something that matters. That's something that's important for a kid like that. And then I also think seeing the success of Derek Queen, I think really will give him kind of like players can really become one and dones and get drafted at a good spot when they end up going to Maryland basketball. So I think that's part of it as well for Maryland basketball. That's like, oh, we just seen Derek Queen do it. We saw what he was able to do, and he got drafted in the lottery and in the first round. I think I can do something similar. So I do think that's also a really big component of this and something else that's really important. And then I also want to update you guys on some other news. This kid, Jalen Collingwood, Maryland made his top schools for this kid, Jalen Collingwood. So this kid's from Sidwell Friends, right there in the DC area. Sidwell is a really solid school in DC, but he sounds like he's actually climbing a lot of the rankings. It sounds like a lot of schools have started to want this kid. He's starting to climb up the ranking. He's starting to insert himself in a really good position. So he made his final 7 schools, and Maryland was in there. And I wanted to make sure I talked about him today as well. But there was like Texas Tech in there, Mississippi State, Ohio State, Michigan State, Vanderbilt, Butler, and Maryland. And so this kid's a 4-star prospect on the 247 rating. On the composite, he's the 3-star. So I think this kid's actually going to really end up climbing. He's a 2026 as well, listed as a small forward, but you probably want him to play more of a 2 guard at 6'5", but I guess 6'5", 190 for college for 3 isn't the worst thing ever. But you kind of want to be interchangeable between the 2 and the 3. But I think another really interesting player that we could end up adding to our 2020 2026 recruiting class, and it looks like it's the type of guy Buzz has really been interested in, getting guys that are like back end 4-star players. I think Buzz likes to develop guys a little bit, but know they're going to be around to stick around. So this is kind of the archetype. So big recruiting news. Maryland's doing a lot, man, in basketball recruiting. I wanted to make sure I talked about it today. The fact that Baba is now in the 2026 class is really interesting, because quickly before you get to the next segment, I was listening to something before it, and it said, I don't know the entire landscape of the basketball recruiting in terms of the 2026 and 2027. Like, I don't know the entire thing and how that's going on, but apparently that the 2026 class is pretty weak compared to the 2025 class and 2024 class, that players feel like they can end up actually having a really be successful in that 2026 class, because a lot of it comes down to who else is in your class. Like when you have certain guys in your class, it's just like you might not be as high of a pick. It can be a money thing. Like think about the class that just got drafted. Like if you're in the class with Cooper Flagg, you're probably not going to end up going number 1 pick. Like there's just some financial, some NBA stuff that has to do with it. So I think that's part of the reason why he reclass up. But I think NIL, people want to start making money as soon as possible as well, which is something that is important too for the Terps, and something that matters, something that the Terps need to be able to look out for, be able to hopefully put in money for Baba.
We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endlessly scrolling, trying to find the best deal? Well, Gametime's zone deals pick the best seats in your section for you. And with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks.
Yesterday was not exactly the rosiest, glowing optimism show that I've ever been able to put out. And look, don't shoot the messenger. I can't control what the news cycle is. I just come on here and react to it and keep you guys up to date. That's the arrangement that we've got. So I thought today, you know what? Let's go optimistic. Let's start with Trey McNutt, who I don't think is going to miss the entire season based on the information that has come out about the injury. Dan Lanning spoke about that. Seems like he could return at some point this year. Does he work his way into the fold as a significant player on the 2025 Oregon defense? Maybe not, because you can get, Wally Pipped or Drew Bledsoe at that point where someone has an opportunity. Maybe he shines. I didn't think he was a starter. I did think he'd probably be on the 2 deep at one of those safety positions. So maybe that means a guy like Aaron Flowers steps up in his second year of college football and becomes a key contributor. Or maybe that means there's a sleeper in the room, like a Solomon Davis perhaps, who I think's more of a nickel but could play some safety back there. Maybe there's somebody that we're overlooking. Maybe there's a position change we don't know about. Or, best case scenario here in my view, maybe Dylan Thieneman and Kingston Lopa both stay healthy the entire year, and they make up the most athletic safety tandem that Oregon has had since Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy have been running this defense for the last 3 seasons. That would be my ideal scenario. And again, I am Captain Optimism today. That is how you shall refer to me for today's show. I am Captain Optimism. I've heard of this guy, Spencer. I heard he's a pretty good podcast host. I, however, am Captain Optimism. Don't forget the captain, like Jack Sparrow. Captain Optimism. So maybe that just comes to fruition. And could we see him on the field this year? Yeah, we could. And I think he's a guy that going forward, based on the type of injury this is, has a solid chance, a real darn good solid chance to get back fully healthy and be a big part of Oregon's secondary next year and maybe the year after that, maybe the year after that, and become an all-conference player, which of course we know is what he's capable of being. So that's optimism point number one. Look how positive I am today, just across the board. Point of optimism number two comes in two folds, two takes, two angles, however you want to phrase it, for Jurrion Dickey. Number one, the coaching staff did not just immediately give up on him and kick him off the team. Dan Lanning said he's been indefinitely suspended. They're trying to work some things out. I appreciate that the coaching staff, in this moment, and actions speak louder than words. Not that words don't matter, but this is putting words into action of, hey, we care about the guys we bring into the program. We care about developing them to succeed on and off the field. If it was just about on the field stuff and Jurrion Dickey wasn't working in the locker room, hey, we've got a bunch of other talented receivers, don't have to go in this direction and try to work it out. If this goes the way that you determine to be the best possible outcome, Jurrion Dickey has a heck of a comeback for Oregon, which is kind of strange to say, seeing as, he hasn't even recorded 30 receiving yards in his Oregon career. But is he still a talented football player? Is he still capable of being that one day for the Ducks? Yeah. And if Dan Lanning and company are able to get him into the right headspace, get him on track, and make him a good player, think about what kind of feel-good story that will be. It would be a reminder, especially for the more old-school college football fans out there, about everything college football can provide to these 18, 19, and 20 and 21-year-old kids, 22, and then, of course, you have some 20, like 6, 7-year-olds that are out there as well. So that's positive angle number one. Positive angle number two on the Jurrion Dickey situation. Oregon has now lost 2 former 5-star recruits going into one season. And the depth of this wide receiver room is still really good as it's ever been. I don't know that you can say the high-end talent right now on paper is as strong as it's been at any point, because the last few seasons have been exceptional. I mean, last year, Trayshawn Holden had to have been last year the best number 3 wideout in all of college football. I think he would have been a 1 on some teams. He would have been a 2 on a lot of really good teams. He was Oregon's number 3 wide receiver last year, and probably the 4th best passing target. You had Evan Stewart, you had Tez Johnson, you had Evan Stewart, Terrence Ferguson, and Trayshawn Holden. So last year, you had a crazy amount of talent. Well, guess what? That you can take a pair of 5-star recruits out of the fold and still feel good about that wide receiver room is pretty awesome. And the name that pops into my head first is indeed the latest Oregon 5-star receiver prospect, Jurrion Moore. Coming into this season, and I'm sure you could find a show of mine from back in spring, pre-Evan Stewart injury, where, coming out of the spring game, I talked about every position group. I'm sure at the time, I don't remember word for word what I said, but I can theorize what I would have been concluding at that time, that Jurrion Dickey and certainly Evan Stewart were 2 guys on the depth chart that would take away from Jurrion Moore's first season. Well, if Oregon's highest ranked receiver recruit of all time and second highest rated recruit of all time, regardless of position, suddenly has to take on a bigger role and still has some veteran depth around him to help maybe ease him into the college ranks and not put a big burden on him right away, but still allow the opportunity for him to absolutely shine, I think he and Dickey would have been closer on the depth chart than he and Evan Stewart, who I thought was Oregon's clear number 1 receiver coming into the year. But I feel really good about Jurrion Moore. Everybody that has ever watched him play football feels like, yeah, this is a guy. I saw one recruiting analyst a while back say that if he'd been in the 2024 recruiting class, which of course had Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, and Cam Coleman, he would have been number 2 only to Jeremiah Smith. That's some seriously high praise. And by the way, let's not forget that Gary Bryant Jr. is going into his 6th year of college football, was a borderline 5-star recruit when he was coming out of high school and originally went to USC. Justice Lowe is really the veteran of the receiver room at this point with how long he has been there. And guys have sung his praises for years in ways that not all of us that cover the team necessarily expected. I think we saw a lot of glimpses of that last year. Every time he was called upon in a situation of need, Justice Lowe stepped up. Tez Johnson went down against Michigan. Justice Lowe was there. Trayshawn Holden got ejected from the Ohio State game. Justice Lowe was there. Do I feel like he's ready for a bigger role? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I still feel really good about Oregon's receiver room. Maybe this means we see more Jeremiah McClellan this year. Ho-hum, another borderline 5-star high school recruit. I want Jurrion Dickey to do well. I want Jurrion Dickey to get back on the right path and be a major player for Oregon one year. It'd be an awesome story. But in the meantime, Captain Optimism over here is pointing out that Oregon's still good. Not a lot of places can say that, but Oregon can. So, shout out Junior Adams. And Ross Douglas has still got plenty of tools in the tool shed.